Some of the oldest mysteries in the Naruto community are what illnesses did Itachi and Kimimaro have, and how did they get them? This is a question that has always mildly interested me, but I finally decided that this was a curiosity that I wanted to finally put to rest. I also wanted to share what I have found with the community as well, since I saw a lot of misinformation and or baseless speculations going about. Now, of course, I have to preface this by saying I have no medical background whatsoever, but then again, neither does Kishimoto. I began to realize that while researching this topic that the diseases these two had show little symptoms whatsoever, which really makes it hard to pinpoint one exact disease for both of these characters. I think there's a reason for this, but I won't reveal it until I finish up trying to diagnose these two. Because of this, most of this is actually going to have to be plot analysis, and reading between the lines first, and then estimations on what diseases they could have had afterwards. I'll start with Itachi first, since that is by far the more interesting one. The first thing I need to do is debunk the common theory that Itachi has an autoimmune disease called microscopic polyangiitis. Just to recap, an autoimmune disease is a disease where the immune system attacks its own body mistakenly, and MPA specifically disrupts small blood vessels. Many people are sold on this because it causes you to cough up blood and greatly irritates your eyes, but really the only symptom Itachi shows is the coughing up of blood. Other common visible symptoms are spots all over your body and of course the eye irritation. People try to jump on the eye irritation being the selling point because of his Mangekyo Sharingan, but it's actually the opposite. We've seen Sasuke, Kakashi, and Obito as well bleed from their eyes from using their Mangekyo, so this is not abnormal for him. His eyes also don't seem red before he starts using the Amaterasu, so that's just a point of evidence for him not having it, along with not having spots all over his skin. Ignoring the fact that he is missing two key symptoms for this disease, this is a rare disease that often happens in more elderly people. It wouldn't make sense for Kishimoto to pick this rare disease no one has hardly heard of, especially since he decides not to show many symptoms of it anyway. Now, the difficulty in this topic lies in how the only symptoms he shows is coughing up blood, potential heart attack, and probably fatigue or lethargy. At first, I wanted to write off the coughing up of blood because that is so common in the series, but because of how much harder Itachi did it than anyone else, it seems important. Also, when Obito says Itachi was sick, it shows a panel showing Itachi coughing up blood, so that cements it for me. Anyway, I'll have to look more towards the plot and dialogue to find the answer, and that's where this whole mystery gets even stranger. For starters, we don't see any symptoms of his illness until the day of his death, but according to Obito and some of Itachi's actions, we know he planned to die from the illness in front of Sasuke. In part 1, we see him fight some without any apparent issues, and in the first arc of part 2, his 30% shadow clone fights Team Kakashi and Chiyo with no problems either. We don't see Itachi again until Sasuke begins hunting him, and that's when it first becomes clear that he's sick. He starts this arc by being with Kisame in the rain after hunting a Jinchuriki. Kisame suggests getting out of the rain or else they'll get sick, and Itachi agrees. He even oddly talks about the future of the Akatsuki and explains what their future move should be in order to succeed. I imagine he's keeping up appearances here, but the key aspects to take away from the scene are that Itachi is looking towards the future and is concerned about not getting ill. They seal the Four Tails after that, and Deidara immediately sets out to find Sasuke. He finds him very quickly, and after they fight, Itachi is told Sasuke perished in Deidara's final explosion. He and Kisame are once again caught in the rain, and Itachi willingly steps out of cover to look up into the sky. Interestingly, Kisame says that Itachi will get sick if he does that, but Itachi doesn't even respond. Shortly after that, the rain clears, and it seems like Itachi was having some type of moment with nature, and was trying to figure out if his brother had died or not. The time period between both of these rains, though, seemed to be about a week, and we see Itachi's behavior change during this time as well. A tailed beast takes a few days to seal, and Deidara seemingly found Sasuke the same day he set out for him. And it does seem that Itachi declares Sasuke alive the same day that he is announced dead at an Akatsuki meeting. We first see Itachi say that, then we see Sasuke resting, and then we see the Leaf Shinobi tracking Sasuke check out the blast site, which they were close enough to see detonate in real time. So generally speaking, after a week, Itachi went from concerned about his health and forward-looking to disregarding of his health and solely focused on Sasuke. After this, Sasuke is hunting him, so he starts arranging for their final battle. It doesn't take long for this to happen either, because it seems that the Leaf Shinobi gets Sasuke sent from the blast site and immediately start tracking him. This leads up to Itachi versus Sasuke, and at most this sequence takes days to occur. So if we be very generous here, Itachi's death took place 2 weeks after he seems perfectly healthy. Which is odd because what disease could have progressed that fast? What's even odder is that somehow Zetsu did not know about the disease but Obito did. After Deidara's death, Obito says Itachi does not have much longer, but while Zetsu was watching Itachi fight, he didn't know Itachi was sick beforehand. And he even says after the fight that he estimates that Itachi was sick, but couldn't make any definite conclusions. You would think Zetsu would have known of this since he was constantly spying. He watched Pain vs. Naruto while Obito didn't, and he watched Naruto vs. Sasuke in Part 1 while there's no evidence that Obito watched that either. So how did Obito know that and Zetsu did not? Did Obito personally spy on Itachi since he saw him as a threat? I've more or less stated all the facts surrounding his death, so it's time to start drawing some conclusions and proposing a possible diagnosis. There are some criteria we can use to narrow it down to start, and this includes his observed symptoms, along with the fact that this was a fast-acting illness that killed him. Obito says he used medicine to prolong his life, so more than likely Itachi stopped taking that medicine once Sasuke was hunting him so he could orchestrate his own death. Another aspect that can narrow this down is that this is more than likely a common illness since Kishimoto has no medical background and didn't show that many symptoms anyway. I already threw out microscopic polyangiitis as a diagnosis, and the fact that this was fast-acting also does not help its case. Any autoimmune disease is unlikely here because they are generally not deadly, and when they are, they're not rapid killers. Another popular theory is tuberculosis, but this is not very likely either. TB is still a common illness, and in fact is the second leading killing infectious disease behind COVID. TB is more of a slow killer though, and even before antibiotics it would take years to kill someone. Nowadays it's very curable, but we don't really know what the state of medicine is in Naruto. Itachi would need antibiotics for TB, and if they didn't exist, it would be hard for him to hide this illness, since it's marked by persistent coughing. It also would be unlikely to kill him so fast if he went off his medicine like I've theorized. One possibility that is a little more likely is him having lung cancer or cancer in general. That would cause him to cough up blood, and those with lung cancer are at an elevated risk for a heart attack too. Untreated lung cancer can kill in months, but that still doesn't really meet that 2-week requirement that I think people are overlooking. If he had some type of cancer, it would be likely he'd be showing symptoms for months even while treating himself. And if he stopped treating himself, it seems far-fetched he would go from visibly healthy to deathly ill in the span of 2 weeks. Although another point of evidence that favors cancer is that in some translations, Obito says Itachi's illness was eating him out from the inside, which does sound cancer-esque. There is one illness that I think checks most if not all the boxes I've created though. I do in fact believe that the memes are actually true and Itachi has AIDS. Not ninja AIDS, but actual AIDS. What really makes me believe this is that the rain scenes in the 2-week timeline. And this is because people with AIDS don't usually die from AIDS, but from some other disease instead. AIDS weakens your immune system and makes you more prone to catching something. My theory is that Itachi had AIDS, but was able to manage it by taking medicine to suppress it. Those with AIDS can live years as long as they don't catch some other type of illness that kills them. This is why before he knows Sasuke is hunting him, he is acting normal. He gets out of the rain and talks about the future of the Akatsuki. After this, though, he intentionally stands out in the rain, and Kisame coincidentally talks about catching something. This makes me think that Itachi specifically wanted to weaken his immune system further, since he knew that the final showdown was imminent. Remember, AIDS itself is not a fast killer, it's the opportunistic diseases that are. Before these events, he's visibly healthy, but once he presumably stops taking medicine and stands out in the rain to further weaken his immune system, he rapidly deteriorates. The disease I estimate he caught while standing out in the rain was pneumonia, based on the timeline and the symptoms. Untreated pneumonia can kill in weeks or even days, and one symptom is coughing blood. Those with pneumonia are also at a heightened risk of having a heart attack too. Pneumonia is common to catch with AIDS, and cardiovascular diseases are present in 78% of AIDS patients according to one study I found. This is due to the constant inflammation causing buildups and blockages in the heart, and of course this can cause heart attacks or whatever caused Itachi to clutch his heart right before he died. My AIDS theory is further supported by some translations of Obito saying that Itachi used all kinds of medicine to prolong his life. This could suggest that he was just being very diligent, or it could suggest that he had many different diseases due to AIDS. If these diseases were to constantly pop up, he would be having to take all different kinds of medicine to keep appearing healthy. And this would explain why Zetsu is in the dark about it and Obito doesn't mention it until right before Itachi dies. More than likely, Obito got curious over what Itachi was going to do about Sasuke and began personally spying on him. He could have found the medications Itachi was taking and could probably see the writing on the wall by Itachi's actions once Hebi is formed. There are only two real counter-arguments for him having AIDS. The first is that him standing out in the rain is him just knowing he won't get sick anyway since he'll die soon. As I said earlier, I don't think this holds up because a week prior he was avoidant of the rain, and Kisame specifically says Itachi will catch something in both instances. The second counter-argument is that it's just not that deep. If Kishimoto wanted to give him a specific illness, he likely would have shown more symptoms or given us more clues about it. More than likely, he just wanted to make Itachi look generally sick and have a heart attack to kill him instead of Sasuke. And that's certainly possible, but I think that if you have to pick a disease, AIDS makes too much sense. He got sick too rapidly for cancer to kill him, in my opinion. Although sometimes lung cancer can cause heart attacks. However, lung cancer or even cancer in general is not that common in young people who don't smoke. AIDS is a common disease and can affect anyone. He may have caught it from eating a dead monkey or ape who had the disease, or he could have caught it in battle. Being covered in cuts and wounds in a battlefield full of spewing blood would be an easy way to get AIDS, since one way to get AIDS is having infected blood enter an open wound or even your mouth. I tried to look if this may have happened during the Uchiha massacre, but after that, he's not even scuffed up, so I doubt it happened there, although it is possible. So just to sum up all of this, I do think he died from a combination of AIDS and other illnesses. This is because of how long he was sick with no symptoms, and then dying 2 weeks later. Whatever disease he had was well under control since no one seemed to know about it, not even Kisame or Zetsu. The rain scenes might suggest he was trying to catch an illness by weakening his immune system, since he needed a way to make Sasuke believe he defeated him. In both scenes, Kisame talks about catching something as well. If he caught something that made him cough up blood, pneumonia is a likely candidate, since being rained on increases your chances of getting it, and pneumonia can kill within weeks. He very likely had a cardiovascular disease already, since most AIDS patients do. He had that heart attack because he went off his medicine and overexerted himself, plus the potential pneumonia may have had something to do with that too. I'm pretty confident on the AIDS diagnosis, but as for the actual opportunistic diseases that killed him, it may have been something other than I mentioned. What I do believe is that he did catch a new illness right before his death, and it killed him quickly. Or Kishimoto didn't put that much thought into it, and gave him some serious symptoms without giving him a specific illness. If I had to choose one illness though, it'd be AIDS for sure. As for the second star of this video, the circumstances of his death seem a lot less contentious than Itachi's to me. Despite there being less information about it, there's far less conflicting information about his death as well. We know Kimimaro was ill by the time of Konoha Crush, since Orochimaru planned to use him along with the reanimated Hokage. Fast forward to the Sasuke retrieval arc, and he's so sick that he can't even move. We know that Naruto starts part 1 at age 12 and ends at age 13, so this gives us a ballpark of a year. We actually do know that the Chunin exams took place in the summer, and that Naruto's birthday is in October, so it may have been more of a 6-month period, since the Sannin Showdown arc is right after the Chunin exams in August, and then the Sasuke retrieval arc starts immediately after that. Anyway, if you look at the surface level of his death, you'll find nothing about his illness, and this bothered me for years. His mouth drips blood when he dies, but that happens with almost every death in the series. Another symptom you can write off is how thin he is. Looking at him in the manga, he looks unusually thin, but considering he was in his deathbed earlier in the day, it would explain the weight loss. Any type of long-term illness that slowly kills will cause weight loss, I would imagine. So the only clue we get out of looking at it from the surface is that it was a long-term illness lasting at least 6 months. There is one piece of evidence that steers us in the right direction, though. Kabuto specifically says that had he had Kimimaro's clan's medical history, things would have been a lot different. This is a very specific thing to say for it just to be offhand dialogue. So what do we know about the Kaguya clan? The only special thing we know about their body is that we know that they can develop extra bones as they please, and I can see how this can cause problems. I have 2 possibilities for how his abilities end up backfiring on him. The first is that constantly growing bones could lead to bone cancer or cancer in general. Cancer is the uncontrollable creation of cells in the body. Constantly generating bone cells could have possibly led to harmful mutations forming in his bones as a result. But since Kabuto hints that it has something to do with the bone-growing clan, bone cancer seems pretty plausible. I try to research diseases that are based in bones, and the only common deadly ones seem to be bone cancer. And it kind of makes sense that if you're often rapidly generating bone cells, then it increases the likelihood of losing control of that generation and it turning into cancer. The other idea is that he died from natural causes from generating his bones too much. Tsunade is the biggest piece of evidence for this. When she first showed that she could regenerate from fatal wounds, Shizune said that she would shorten her lifespan. And when we see Tsunade regenerate too much at once, she turns into an old woman despite only being in her 50s. Jiraiya says she's able to appear as a younger woman. So more than likely she's aged far faster than she should have due to regenerating so much. A biological explanation for this is that living cells can only divide so many times before they just stop working. This is possibly because these cells accumulate harmful mutations over time until it gets to the point that the cells can't properly function and organ failure occurs. A counter-argument for this possibility is that Kimimaro does not appear old like Tsunade did. I don't think this theory is as likely because then no one in the Kaguya clan would have lived that long, so I more so support my bone cancer theory. Based on Kabuto's specific comments, Kishimoto has to be alluding to something being wrong with his bones, and the only common deadly illness I could find when it comes to bones was bone cancer. And just to end with one last thought, another challenge in trying to find out what was wrong with these two is trying to figure out what the state of medicine is like in Naruto. Ninjutsu allows for the easy treatments of wounds, but what about more complex diseases? When Sakura made an antidote for Sasori's poison, she used herbs for it instead of taking a more man-made and chemical approach. The only other instance where we see the specifics of medical treatment in the show is Tsunade performing spinal surgery on Lee. That's pretty advanced, but the state of technology in Naruto has always seemed a bit behind our own. When Gaara is captured, the Sand sends a bird with a message to the Leaf Village, but in another instance, the daimyo are able to meet for a video conference right before the war. However, it seemed to take a room full of giant computers to make this happen, and it took so much energy that the meeting apparently had to be cut short. So with all that being said, it seems like the level of technology and medicine in Naruto is not on the same level as our own world. This explains why Itachi and Kimimaro could not be cured. AIDS doesn't have a cure anyway, and bone cancer is not always curable either, especially if you don't have chemotherapy. I'll go ahead and end this video by saying I'm not a doctor, Kishimoto is not a doctor, and I'm not even sure if he thought of a specific illness to give these two characters. However, there are some interesting and intentional scenes that seem to allude to a particular disease for these two. For Kimimaro, Kabuto implies his disease pertains to his clan, so it must be a disease based in his bones. Itachi's situation is more complicated, but the contrast of those two rain scenes could imply that there was something wrong with his immune system. Also, how fast he went from visibly well to visibly sick suggests that he caused something out in that rain in order to guarantee a speedy death. If I had to pick a disease, it would be AIDS because that makes you more prone to catching other diseases. Cardiovascular disease is also very common with AIDS, and that explains the heart problems he seems to have right before his death. Any other disease just doesn't make sense because he can manage himself well enough that Zetsu and Kisame don't know he's sick, but around 2 weeks later he's in horrible shape. I doubt a long-term disease would have progressed that fast had he gone off his medicine, unless it was AIDS that made it easy for him to catch something since there was no more delaying his final fight with Sasuke. Anyway, if you enjoyed this video, please leave a like and subscribe if you want to see more videos in the future. Comment something if you have something to say. And thank y'all for watching, and I guess I'll see y'all next time.